Hey, good evening. Welcome to the First Layer Saturday night call for help. I'm here with Brian, my good friend.
Is that what I am? A friend?
Well, sometimes you're more than a friend.
Oh,
You
it's
know,
gonna be that kind of Saturday night.
sometimes you're more than a friend.
Demonetized.
Well, I have mine is like labelless, so you don't know what's in here.
That's true. Mine's not
So
labeled. This is actually the logo for 911 Supply in Calgary. So
now we're for sure going to be demonetized.
yeah, that's true.
So we're just going to give it a few minutes for a few people to come in, and then we'll do the actual intro this evening. And for anybody that is just kind of watching and not in the chat, we are talking about filament this evening. We're going to talk about all different kinds of filament and try and get you guys all set up and give you a little bit more information about what filament is and what you should be looking for in the filament when you're trying to do the projects that you do. And you would think now we have 5 viewers. That's great. Thank you very much. Come on into the chat, say hi. We do have our super chat turned on this evening. So if you're so inclined and you feel like you want to throw us a little bit of coffee money, you can go ahead and do that. So with me tonight is always my right-hand guy. This is Brian Baker. Say hi, Brian.
Hey guys, how's it going tonight? If you're just like me, you're also struggling to find a link right now because apparently YouTube hasn't broadcasted that we're live, and you'll only see it if you click on our channel. So
there you go. I think we put a link up in Facebook, so you can just click that link. That'll take you right here.
Yeah, I just transferred it over again to Facebook. Hopefully you guys can join.
And yeah, so tonight we're talking about filament. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the different filaments that you can use with your FDM 3D printer. We're not going to get into resins tonight. We'll save that for another show. But tonight, I think that we get a lot of confusion about what filaments are out there, what filaments do for your 3D prints, what are the best filaments for what you're printing. I have a lot of people lately coming into Spool 3D asking me about more exotic filaments like the metal fills and the glow in the darks and things like that. And it's not something that I personally recommend to anybody. And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So let's run that intro. Well, it's Saturday night. I hope you got yourself a drink because we're going to sit down and talk about filament this evening. Let's go back to a better camera angle here. There we go. And we have Ghost Officials. Hey, are you swag? I'm not sure what he means by that.
Swag meant something very different, apparently, 3 years ago.
Good evening, everyone. There's Mr. Raymond Emsley. Hello, sir. We're talking about filaments tonight, guys. So I'm going to pull up a chart here that we have, and we're going to go through some of these filaments. Let me pull that page up. There we go. And we'll do a screen share. By the way, I'm gay, so yay. Well, good for you.
We are all inclusive here.
It doesn't matter what your status is personally. We're just here to talk about filament. Okay, so what is the most popular filament to print with? I'm going to say it's ABS still. What do you say, Brian?
Yeah, as I found out, a lot of people are still printing with ABS, but I'm going to say PLA. I think it's taken over.
I think PLA is taking over. It's a plastic that I highly recommend. When people come into Spool 3D, I definitely want them to look at PLA first if they're new to 3D printing. If they've got some experience and they've got the right setup, then I'll take them into other filaments. But PLA is pretty much, I think, the best starter filament because it's biodegradable, it's easy to print with, It's fairly inexpensive. So what's your favorite filament, Brian?
Well, again, I got to go with PLA. It's just too easy to print with. You know, I tried to switch over to some PETG tonight, and that wasn't working out again. So I just went back to PLA. I find the strength is usually good enough.
I think you're right about that. I think the strength is, you know, good for anything that you're going to put around your house. I mean, if you're doing parts like the robot back here, this one that I've been working on, which is kind of blown out because it's white. This one here is all made from ABS because I wanted the strength, but I think you're right about PLA. Like this one here is PLA. PLLA.
Well,
That's PLA. And I think if you're going to do stuff that you're going to paint, PLA is just fine. Let's take a look at that chart that I pulled up. All right, so here's the chart. And on this chart, you're going to see there's ABS flexible PLA hips or flexible PLA hips, PETG, nylon, carbon fiber, ASA, polycarbonate, polypropylene, metal fills, wood fills, and PVA. Now, again, my favorite is, of course, PLA. You can see that it does have a fairly decent strength ratings at 65. What is that? 65 MPa.
I think it's megapascals. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the stiffness goes, it's 7.5 out of 10, and durability is 4 out of 10. Let me explain what that means. At 4 out of 10, that means that because it is made from cornstarch, it's going to break down. And if it breaks down in the sunlight is where it's going to break down the most. It will over time become very brittle. Your maximum temperature is service temperature is 52°C, which that means that's the glass transition of PLA, if I'm correct about that.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And then you've got the coefficient of thermal expansion, which we don't really care about because nobody really cares. But the price, $10 to $40, depending. This is something we've both been kind of duped into, the $10 PLA. Brian, let's talk about your experience with the cheap PLAs.
Well, cheap. I mean, cheap PLA is cheap PLA. You're gonna not have the guaranteed quality in each batch, shall we say? There's no guarantee that one reel is the same as the next. No guarantee that color is the same as the next. No guarantee that melting temperature is the same as the next. I've had some really good $10 filament, and then the next batch was absolute trash. So, you know, I don't know. To each their own. They might have luck with it, but in this dry Alberta climate, it seems to complain quite a bit.
I agree with you on that. I know this past summer, PLA just didn't print worth the darn for me. I got stringing like crazy over the summer, but now that we're into the winter, I get no stringing at all.
Really?
All. Extruder temperatures. Let's talk about that for a second. You're looking at 190 to 220. I tend to print mine a little on the high side because we are in a drier climate. So I print mine right around 205, 210. What about you?
Yeah, 210 is a happy number. Some of the PLA pluses I've been running as high as 220, but then you got to increase your cooling at that stage to overcome the melt factor. I would say, I mean, I've never seen people print at 190, and there's a couple reasons for that. First reason is at 190, you're creeping in on what some of the cold extrusion numbers are set in the firmware for some printers. And number two, you might as well be printing extremely slow at 190. It will result in a better print, but it can also jam up quite easily because you're getting so much closer to that liquid transition point, if you will.
Right. I agree with that 100%. Now, bed temperature, here's something that a lot of people struggle with is bed temperature. 45 to 60 is normally what's recommended on any general PLA. Some will say 0 to 60 or 0 to 45. I personally have my beds all set at 60 just because of our climate here. It is a little cooler, so Heated bed is optional; it's not required. In my mind, I think you should have a heated bed for everything that you do. Let's talk about adhesion methods for a second. Painter's tape, glue stick, glass, plate, PEI, that sort of thing. I use mirrors, which is essentially glass, and I use glue stick on top of that. What about you, Brian?
I try to go for straight glass, and with that, I have to run my bed at 60 to 70 to increase the adhesion on there. But you know, glue stick has always been a kind of mixed bag for me. Sometimes it does work, and I find when it does work, it will not work the next. So maybe I'm just applying it wrong. But I have it there for certain materials when they do start to lift. You know, PETG and so forth. But
Right.
I guess to each their own. I mean, glue stick I think has been the most repeatable in sorts of preventing warping and lifting, especially when you have any kind of skirt on your print or a brim. But
Right.
yeah, to each their own. Man, I know you swear by glue stick. Me, I swear against it if I can.
Or you swear at it.
I do swear at it often. Yes.
For me, PLA, it really, I've always used glass and glue stick. Well, let's start back at the beginning. When I was using a lot of tape, and I would go through rolls and rolls and rolls of tape, and at $3 a roll, it doesn't really go that far.
No, it doesn't.
Once I went to glue stick and glass, I found that I got more repeatable results. I found that my parts stuck down quite nicely. And if you look at any of my printers that are currently in the studio, you'll notice that any one of them that's got glass on it, it's pretty caked in glue stick. And I haven't applied new glue stick for probably 4 months. And at the price of glue stick, I mean, it's like $1 a tube. So it's pretty economical once you're in that glass area. If you're using surfaces like build tack or anything that's got a textured surface, or even replacing with the ultra base glass, you will not need glue stick for that. But just straight glass or mirror, I like the glue stick. I think it works great when I need to clean it off. Take it to the sink and clean it off. You don't have to clean it every time. Part cooling is something that is essential. I always run my fan right through to max 100% when I'm part cooling, but I don't start my fan until the second layer. What about you, Brian?
Again, I don't start mine till the second layer, but my percentage numbers are way off of where yours are, and that's because I run dual 50-15 blowers. So
That's true.
I run about 30% on average. I was experimenting a bit with 50, but it starts to get a little noisy at that point. So
that's true. Raymond
yeah.
Emsley says here in the chat, he says, I use glue stick all the time in my big machine and have never had a problem. There's the Minnesota maker. Welcome, sir. If you're just joining us, we're talking about filaments tonight. And we're going to get into more in-depth on filaments at a later date. We're just kind of doing a general discussion tonight. Minnesota maker, let us know what your favorite filament to print in is and tell us why.
And while you guys are at it, let us know if YouTube's actually showing us as live, because it's not showing as live for me on the other pages until I actually click on the channel. So sorry about that if you're coming in after the fact and missing this tonight.
I'm showing us live.
I still haven't even received a notification that we're live, so I don't know what's going on tonight.
Oh. Well,
thanks, YouTube.
Thanks, YouTube. Okay, so let's go into the next most common plastic, and that's going to be ABS. Anybody that's printing with ABS, you really need to have an enclosure. You don't quite have the same ultimate strength in ABS as you do in PLA, apparently. I think that's wrong. Now, remember, we're using a chart from Simplify 3D, which is a program that both Brian and I use. And the reason that we chose this chart is because it's non-brand specific. Stiffness, I think they're right in the ballpark at about 50% stiffness, 5 out of 10. Durability, 8 out of 10. I think that's correct. A glass transition temperature is 98C. Your density is grams per centimeter is 1.04. Your price is right around $10 to $40 again, which is you're usually going to find ABS about $1 or $2 less than what you'd find PLA at. Your extruder temperature here is something that's very important, 220 to 250. Now, if you are using a nozzle or an assembly that has a PTFE liner down the throat of your hot end, this might be a little difficult for you because at 240, those PTFE liners start to break down and you could clog your hot end. Brian, what do you think about that?
Yeah, again, I do try to avoid ABS because I don't have the enclosures set up, and it does creep into that zone where the problem is they sell everyone saying your printer can print ABS, it can print PLA. I can guarantee it can print PLA, but ABS, especially depending on what your PFTE liner is rated for, it might start to warp at 235. So I don't advise anyone to go into that range. And oh my gosh, ABS, does it ever stink?
It does.
That's one thing. Even if you don't have an enclosure, because you can print it without an enclosure. I mean, I ended
You
up buying a
can.
Rubbermaid bucket and throwing my printer in there, but it smells. And really, the only reason you'd want to go to it over PLA in most cases is just for the strength and not to have it warp in the sun. I kind of feel like the smoothing factor is also a little overrated, to be honest.
I'd agree with you on that. I think the smoothing factor, vapor smoothing, is a little. It's again, you're dealing with another smelly chemical, and I've got some right here on the floor in a can. I guess I'm going to have to stop showing that so I can show this. So here's some acetone. This is what you would use for vapor smoothing your ABS. Now, a lot of people use it. A lot of people have special setups for vapor smoothing. What does it do to your model? If you've got no detail on it, like this guy back here again, use you as an example again. Look, part of his head's popping off. There we go. If we look at this, if I vapor smooth this, because there's not a lot of detail, it would look great. But because it doesn't have any detail, that's where it would look good. If I was doing something like this and tried to vapor smooth it, a lot of the detail in the mustache would soften up, and same within the beard hair, and the glasses would even soften up. Or round off, I would probably say. So you'd lose some of that detail. Good evening, Mr. RT. Minnesota Maker says, used to be inland mostly because I have a micro center very close, but inland has gone downhill in quality, so he's looking for others. Art says, yeah, he didn't get a notification, so we apologize for that. And there's Mr. Mark L. Baker. Hello, sir. Welcome. Happy New Year to you as well. So getting back to ABS, now I have a special machine that I print ABS in. That is my Wanhao Duplicator 6. It's an enclosed machine. I run it all the time in my office at the studio, and I don't have any problem with it, getting into my lungs or anything like that, because it's always quite contained. But if you don't have an enclosure, because it's very susceptible to temperature change, some of the things that you can experience with ABS is warping, where it actually lifts off the bed and starts to shrink really fast in one area. You can also experience layer separation. And here's what camera, I'm on this camera. I don't need to be on this camera. Well, I'm on this camera anyway. So layer separation between the layers here will start to crack, and then you lose all the structural integrity of that piece. So it's best to have an enclosure when you're printing ABS. It saves your lungs, it saves people in the house. Because of the off-gassing, it is a carcinogen. So you want to make sure that you either have it in an enclosure and let it cool down and let that carcinogen dissipate properly, or you could run into some severe issues. Here, we'll go back to this camera. There we go. What do you say, Bri?
I agree. Just I have nothing to say about ABS. For what it's worth, from what I've seen, PETG really, and we'll talk about that shortly, but PETG really kind of covers up the benefits of printing ABS.
Sir Blimkin, I'm not quite understanding what you're asking here. So you might have to clarify that. Comments tonight and questions should be related to 3D printing, just so you guys know. On to the next one, which is PETG. PETG, or PETG as it's commonly referred to, is the same type of plastic that water bottles are made from. PETG that you buy in a roll is not food safe, because if it was food safe, it would have to go through a special, what do you call in there? A special certification through the Food and Drug Association. And by the time it goes through extruder, it's no longer food safe anyway. But PETG is kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to dealing with smell, warping, that sort of thing. PETG is a great plastic to use in as an alternative to ABS, because it gives you virtually the same strength and a little bit more flexibility in the parts. So if you're using it to build, let's say, parts for a 3D printer, PETG would be a good choice. It doesn't warp, it doesn't split, and it has no smell. And it prints very close to PLA, Bri?
Absolutely, it does. In fact, the roll that I have from Spool 3D is saying 200 to 240, and I did play with it for a little bit, and sure enough, it does flow at 200. I mean, you have to print pretty slow, but you can print them as in the 215s, 220s if you really want.
Nably's got a question here. Nably 2, I hope, or Nalby 2. How do you get rid of PETG first layer blobs? If you're getting blobs, that means two things. One, you've got a little bit of a clog in your extruder. And if you are trying to print PETG with a lined throat, which has a little bit of a PTFE liner in it, or a Teflon liner in it, that's going to start breaking down at the higher temperatures of about 235, 240. So that could be causing some of your issues, your restriction issues. So what's happening is when it gets down to the end of that nozzle and it's superheated to 240, 245, let's say, it's going to come out in that little blob, because now it's being forced through. So you're going to get that little blob. So what I would suggest you do is, first of all, check your hot end. Make sure that it is an all metal hot end. You do get the best results by having an all metal hot end. And when I say that, I'm not saying brass is not metal, but you really want to have a stainless steel nozzle. You want to have a unlined throat in that path as well, that has no PTFE liner in it, and you will get much better results. You are going to have to work on retraction, and you're going to have to do a temperature tower to make sure that it is printing properly, and where you're going to get the best adhesion. Brian?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. It does. PETG, I'm not gonna lie, is problematic when it comes to printing. It's a lot more temperamental than PLA. PLA, you can go way out on the ranges, completely mess up your settings, and it'll still probably print. But PETG, you gotta go slow. You gotta play with your retractions. It's gonna string. You can't bridge properly with it. There's a whole list of things. So, if there's anything you get out of today, understand that each filament has a purpose, and there is no end-all one solution for filament.
I agree with that. There's Blaine Ramsden. Hello, sir. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that PETG has its place. If you're doing anything that you want to put outside in your garden, or make parts for a bicycle or a 3D printer or things like that, PETG is definitely going to be the go-to plastic for that. But you guys have to realize that your extruder temperatures are going to go anywhere between 230 and 250. and your bed is going to have to be able to get up to around 80 degrees or 90 degrees, depending on the manufacturer's plastic that you're using. So, and adhesion to that, adhesion's a big thing. I want to talk quickly about that on PETG. I've experienced this. I don't know if you have, Brian, but when you're using PETG on a glass bed, you really want to make sure that you put down a layer of some sort of barrier, whether that be glue stick. Hairspray is not something I recommend, or you're going to put down tape. Whatever you're going to do, you have to have a intermediate layer between your PETG and your glass surface, because if you don't, what happens is PETG is so sticky that it will stick to the glass and literally pull chunks of glass out of your bed. And if you're paying $25 or $30 for a borosilicate glass bed, you can ruin it very fast. So my recommendation is get some glue stick, put it down over top of that bed, and then go ahead and start printing with your PETG, and you should be just fine.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I right now my printer, which I'm trying to see if I can get us a live footage of, but right now it is currently it's got a nice little divot in the center, and it's just not big enough for me to warrant changing out the mirror yet. But
you got a divot in your mirror?
I've got several dents. I mean, I've taken out chunks on several mirrors with PETG.
Gotcha. Now let's go on to some of the more exotics here. We'll start with flexible filament. Flexible filaments, for anybody that is interested in doing stuff that, you know, is squishy, for lack of a better word, or if you're doing tires for your RC cars, or you're doing gaskets, that kind of thing. There are several different flexibles out there. There's flexible PLA, there's TPU, TPE, and there's a few other brands of flexible material. Make sure that if you are going to be doing something flexible that has to go through some sort of road salt or chemical, that you're using the right flexible plastic. TPE is probably the best plastic for RC car tires, for any kind of gasket. It's got about an 80 shore hardness, so it is quite pliable. So if you're made, say, a round gasket to go into something large, you need that gasket to block anything that might spill out between two pieces. Then TPU, or TPE, pardon me, is the one you want to go with. It's fairly durable. Welcome, William. Brian's blinking on and off there again. We may lose him.
Yeah, I think you lost my visuals there. My GPU just crashed.
There you go. So yeah, flexibles, do a little bit more research into flexibles. We're going to be covering each one of these plastics on the show, dedicated to each plastic this year in 2019. We'll let you know ahead of time when we're covering those. But flexibles are great if you want to do stuff that has to have some sort of bounce or flexibility to it. Let's move on to hips. A lot of people are using hips. What do they use it for? Well, that's a good question. Hips is not a very, it doesn't have a high strength to it, but it is very stiff, and it does have some durability to it. So its glass transition temperature is about 100 C, and it runs in about $24, $32. It's got about a 6 out of 10 for printability. You're going to print that at 230 to 245. Your bed has to be able to go over 100 degrees. Heated bed is required. Again, glue stick and glass is a great way to go. With that, you are going to need a heated an enclosure and a heated bed. Those are a must for printing with hips. Then you've got nylon, you've got carbon fiber, ASA, polycarbon. So we're going to dive into those more at a later date, because I think that those are plastics that really need to have a lot more information to them. For now, what I would say, if you are new to 3D printing, this is something that you've gotten into in the last year, and you haven't moved on from PLA, try PETG. Remember that it is a plastic that needs some monitoring, and there are some caveats to it that you might want to look at. That being said, that's all I really got to say about filaments for tonight. So let's open it up to questions. If you guys got questions, put them here in the chat on YouTube, and we can certainly answer those for you. Coming up on Tuesday, just so you guys know, I have done a complete video on how to solder the XT60 connectors. I repaired a gentleman's 3D printer over last week, and he phoned me today and said that it's all working great and his connectors aren't getting above 25 to 27 degrees, which is great. I think that's awesome. The XTC connectors, if you're not sure how to solder them, check out Tuesday's episode. I want to remind you guys that while Brian's still working with his camera here, I want to remind you guys that we do have a contest going on. It is to win that toolkit that we showed last Tuesday. We did a complete video on what's going in there. There are some extra tools going in there as well that we didn't talk about. And so there's going to be a few surprises in there for you. How do you get involved and try and win that? All you have to do is leave a comment below this video, like, subscribe, and the comment should have hashtag Year of the Maker. I didn't do a lower third for tonight, so I apologize. But the hashtag is Year of the Maker. This year, we are concentrating on doing more projects, getting them out to you, showing you what we did and how we did it, and really keeping up to date and showing you guys and answering your questions on 3D printing and moving forward with that. Because now, last year, if you guys watched any of the episodes from last year, they were really catered to the beginner. This year, we're diving in hard on doing some more Marlin videos. We're going to do some more videos comparing different slicers, not just Cura and Simplify 3D. We're going to be throwing in a bunch of new slicers as well. Yeah, we're going to be at the Calgary Expo here in Calgary on the April 24th, I believe. Let me just check the calendar here. I know it's here somewhere. We will be there April 25th to the 28th. I don't know our booth number yet, but we will be there. So mark your calendars, April 25th to April 28th. Brian and I both will be at the Calgary Expo in the Spool 3D booth. There to answer your questions about 3D printing and make sure that you guys are all set up straight. We might do a live stream from there. I haven't decided. Would you guys like to see a live stream? Give me a thumbs up in the comments here, or say hell yeah, or whatever you want to do. We do have Super Chat turned on tonight, so if you're so inclined and you want to take part in that, by all means. What else do I want to talk about really quickly while we got everybody around here? Do you guys have any questions for me regarding your 3D printing? Give you a second to answer those.
And Brian, as much as I may be a gray screen here, I am reading the comments. So
okay.
Don't explain to me why Google Hangouts in Chrome right now is using 54% of a Ryzen CPU. I don't know.
54%?
Yeah.
Wow. vMix is only using like 14% on my side.
Yeah, there's something. Well, it's not even OBS, which is failing to launch. Chrome itself is using 46%.
Holy Christmas.
Yeah, it's magical.
It's magical. So I've had some questions. This is not really related to 3D printing, but I've had some questions about how I do my live streams and my setups. We have two completely different setups, one in my home and one at the studio. The one here at home uses two 920 webcams into an older PC, which is, I think, a 3770 or 3990 Intel CPU. It's an unlocked CPU, so it's the K version. We've got 16 gigs of RAM in this thing. It's a great little computer to do what we're doing here at home because I don't need a lot, and I just use the lav, and I'm monitoring what everybody's saying. Michael Ridout, I'm having an issue with my prints. Can I send a pic somewhere so I might be enlightened as to what is happening? Absolutely. Michael, put your picture on our Facebook page, and that is facebook.com/groups/the first layer. If you want to put it on there, if you're not a member of our Facebook group, we can go and have a quick peek at it. We don't use Twitter very often, so I'm sure we should probably use Twitter a little bit more, but we don't. So yeah, we'll go and take a look at that for you. Absolutely. I have Facebook loaded here, so there we go. I'll just move it over to this screen so I can see what's going on. Close that out. Now, on our Facebook page, I put up a poll asking you guys, and it was really, honestly, it was intended for those that are in the Calgary and area, but it seems like a lot of people are interested in having me do a class of some sort. And it's people all over the world that have said that they're interested in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to design a webinar, which will probably help each and every one of you that are interested in having a class. So that way you don't have to leave your home. So that might be a good thing for you guys. What else do I want to do? Victor Vasquez, I want to say thank you for posting that YouTube video about 3D printing at CES 2019. CES is on, or is just wrapped up actually. And that's a consumer electronics show down in Vegas every year. It's a great little show, or not little show. It's at the Las Vegas Convention Center. It's quite a large show. But 3D printing is now making a bigger impact in the consumer electronics show. Let me just refresh this page so I can see what Michael has put over here. So Dread P. Roberts, is that you, Michael? Pick is there. I'm just going to pull up this picture here and we'll have a quick peek at it. That looks to me like you've got almost a little bit of over extrusion going on. And then you've got a little bit of warpage happening there. Maybe that's just me looking at that. Brian has kind of, what does ghosting cause from? I'll get to that in just a second. So Michael, yeah, okay, that's your picture. Okay, let me see if I can share that screen. Okay, we're going to share the screen here. So what it looks like to me, my mouse, you can see here, you've got a gap right here. And what that seems to me is that because you're over extruding, it's lifting and pulling away from that. You might have too much heat going on because these little wisps that we're seeing coming off this, is this PLA? Michael, I just want to make sure that this is PLA that you're using. RT says he's building his Ender 3 finally. Should I replace the stock coupling? Which stock couplings? Are you talking about the Z-axis there, RT? Okay, so it is PLA. So what I'm looking at here tells me that you're running maybe a little too hot and that your flow might be a little too much here. You can see here, you see where my mouse is kind of going across here on the bottom. This is telling me that your flow might be a little bit too high. If it's over 100%, because it looks like you've got a little bit of over extrusion. What printer are you running? No, you shouldn't replace the coupling on that, RT. You should be fine. Raymond, what is ghosting? caused from? Ghosting is caused from a number of things. Acceleration, jerk, and speed are the three things that affect ghosting. Ender 3 Pro. So, and you're using Cura, the one that came with your Ender 3 Pro, or are you using the latest version 3.6? So get back to that ghosting question. Ghosting is caused again by several things: jerk, acceleration, and speed of print. On the Ender 3 or any Creality product for that matter, I have my jerk settings in Cura set down to 5 millimeters per second, or 5, and that way it stops pretty much on a dime. I find when you have too much jerk acceleration going, like let's say 10 or 20, and you'll find that in most 3D printers that the jerk is actually set really high. The lower you set it, I think the less ghosting that you get. That's been my experience. Also bring your acceleration down to about 500 if you're using a Creality based machine. And I would slow my print down to about 40, anywhere from 40 to 60 millimeters per second. And that should take care of some of that ghosting for you. Good evening, Johnny, Minnesota Maker, Red 1, or Red Light 34, I'm sorry. Larry, hello, sir, from Nebraska. So you're using the latest version of 3.6. So I'm going to probably say that you're over extruding in 3.6. I am going to be covering Cura 3.6 here in the upcoming weeks because now that it's been out for a little while and people have been looking at it more often, it seems to see people have been upgrading to it. It seems that it's time to put out a brand new video on it. Yeah, if you printed out 5 at the same time, they all have the same defect. It's because there's something wrong with your settings in your slicer. So I will be doing a video coming up, and it seems like it needs to be sooner than later. So we will get that done. If you have pictures, you can go and put them over on our Facebook page. That is facebook.com/group/thefirstlayer. Now, Cura 3.6, let me just quickly talk about that tonight, because Cura 3.6 has come a long way over previous iterations of Cura. I would dare say that Cura now is in the running with Simplify 3D, and anybody who's been watching this show for a long time knows, and anybody that knows me that comes into Spool 3D knows that I typically use Simplify 3D for everything that I do. Lately, I have been looking and working with Cura 3.6 a little bit more, and I'm finding that the ability to print and to slice seems to be a little bit better. Again, there are some issues. I'd really like to customize my supports a little bit more than what it allows you to do. But Cura 3.6, if you're looking for a good free solution right now, that is the one I highly recommend, and that's the one that I would tell you to upgrade to instead of spending $150 US and buying Simplify 3D. Any other questions regarding your 3D printer? Just keep putting them here in the chat, and I'm going to keep responding to them as they come in. Talking about CES, yes. Again, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Hopefully I can get to that one next year. It is a great place to go if you're a tech head like me. Will I try and do some video from there if I get there next year? Absolutely. And while I'm there, I'm going to stop in and do something with Jerry Knapp If I put the same settings in S3D and Cura 3.6, 3.6 gives me a bad print. Johnny, interesting. That's interesting. I haven't found that. I can use the same settings in both, and they both come out reasonably the same. I will look into that when I get back into the office on Monday. Would a smaller diameter nozzle help my prints? What nozzle are you using right now, Michael? 0.4 nozzle is the one that I recommend for most things that you're going to print. I have printed 28 millimeter miniatures on the Ender 3 with a 0.4 nozzle, and they look amazing. I will show some of those next week as well. Michael Fuentes, I have some upgrades I purchased for my CR10S I'd like to ask about. Michael, by all means, go ahead. You can ask me about those. So you're using, Michael Ridout is saying he's using a 0.4. Stick with the 0.4. Again, I have a funny feeling it's settings inside of Cura. But I do a lot of small things. Then you will really want to know about the settings that you can do with a 0.4 nozzle. And I will show those next week on the show, and we may continue this conversation next Saturday as well. It looks like it's a conversation that we need to have a deeper discussion on. Brian, I see you're back. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I am back in sun form. For those of you who are interested in IT shenanigans, I don't know what is running on this computer, but occasionally it goes and crashes everything and might take upwards of 15 minutes to launch an app, which doesn't make any sense on this shiny computer. So I'm still drilling down. My CPU is not loaded. My drivers are all running. I just don't know. So it's an ongoing battle.
All right there.
Yeah.
All right then. So Michael Fuentes, just put your questions there. I will be happy to answer them, or Brian will be happy to answer them. We've done a lot of upgrades on my CR10S. For anybody that follows the show that's in the chat this evening, we have a series of 4 episodes. There's 4 parts. We started with the Bondtech extruder. Then we went to the Micro Swiss all metal hot end. Then we put on the PETS Fang. And finally, we ended with the BL Touch for auto bed leveling on the CR10S. And it is working great. Johnny Gardner says, bad hardware or memory?
Yeah, I've checked the memory and the hardware. I mean, I'm hoping it's not the GPU because it's the GTX 1070, and not about to open a GoFundMe account for that because I know everyone's doing that in their gourd these days. So we're just gonna have to see. I'm hoping the GPU is still good. As I said, it hasn't thrown any errors. So, Larry, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You do this one.
All right, Larry. Love your videos. I'm getting Ender 3 Pro from my wife. Ooh. So you've already got probably like 7 prints cashed up for her to make for. But I know nothing about the magnetic bed. I was thinking of using a glass bed. Can I take off the magnetic bed and use the glass?
Yes.
You can take off. I would say don't take off the magnetic substrate in there. I would say maybe just take off the flex portion. But I won't lie. I've got that flex one on my Ender 3 Pro running right beside me here, and that's what this print job is right now on. I love that thing. So unless you want a mirror finish bottom, give it a try. I think you'll like it.
I found it important to, when you're first setting up your 3D printer on the Ender 3 Pro with that magnetic bed, get it all put together, test everything. Before you do your first print, heat up that bed to about 60 degrees. Just let it sit there for a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes, then cool it down, then, preheat your machine and start your print. I found that worked great, and no issues, no bubbling, no nothing. Michael Fuentes, I bought the aluminum threaded rod holders to replace the plastic one that come at the top of the machine. It keeps the thread rod from wobbling. Thoughts? You bought metal replacements? I don't think I've seen the metal replacements. Mine have plastics on them. All it is it's just holding a little bearing at the top of the 3D printer and that little 3D and that little bearing, keep those rods need to move just a little bit. So although that it does have the bearing around it, that bearing can move a little bit within the top. They really should be constrained, but I think that Creality uses substandard rods, so they're always just a little bit out of spec.
Honestly, though, it sounds like you're maybe patching a problem rather than fixing it. The wobble, try dialing back your jerk settings and see if that wobble goes away. I bet you it will, because mine stopped wobbling and I'm printing as high as 150 millimeters per second.
So Johnny Gardner says, do I need a PETS fang for the CR10S Pro to put on the BL Touch? No, you do not. As far as I know, we've had a pretty good look at the Pro. It's on my desk at the shop in the studio right now, and it looks like it can be mounted. There might be a new mount that has to go in there for the BL Touch. So I would look around on Thingiverse or design one yourself. But you're going to be replacing the existing bed leveling system that's in there. We found out that the bed leveling system is, in fact, not a capacitive, but an inductive sensor. Or maybe I've got that wrong. Capacitive senses metal, right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a capacitive sensor that is in there because the plate that is on the CR10S Pro is about 3 millimeters thick, the removable bed, and it is
not
metal.
A flex plate.
It is not a flex plate.
You know, you'll see that later, but we're just going to emphasize that now. It is not a flex plate.
Yeah.
If you do manage to flex it, let us know, because we'll have to sell you a replacement one. Also, you'll get our grand admiration for managing to bend that thing.
Yeah, yeah. Bearing is secure in the aluminum. Okay, that's fine then. You're good to go there, Mr. Fuentes. Is it possible to successfully print with ABS on a heated bed without a printer enclosure, Chris Walker?
Absolutely it is. But is it worth it? I mean, I've got a monoprice unit here, and I did do some early ABS. If you're doing small enough stuff, and you honestly, if the bed is big enough that it can radiate heat upwards and keep that general area warm, then yeah, you can print it. But I mean, it smells bad, all that. If you have a small form factor printer, I have to look at the Ender 3 Pro. I think it's a little big, but you might be able to get a big enough Rubbermaid bin to throw it in. And I've seen people actually throw trash bags over their printers, and it's been a good enough enclosure to print ABS. It's just, the question is, why do you want to print ABS? I mean, if you have a specific need for it, then chances are you're going to set up something to print exclusively ABS, because once you're set up for it, there's really no reason not to print it.
Exactly. I agree with you. The rod doesn't wobble, Mr. Fuentes says, and just wanted to be secure. What do you guys think about anti-backlash nuts on the CR10? They're not needed. Plain and simple, they're not needed.
Yeah, this thing holds its height fine. Actually, all these Crealities are pretty good at holding their height.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with the height on any of my CR10S machines. I think it works just great, and I'm happy for it to be the way that it is.
Maybe with the original CR10, given its size and not having a dual Z, it might help a little bit, but
I don't think it's going to help at all. I think your best bet is to do the upgrade if you've got a CR10. Do the dual motor upgrade, and then just go from there. Because you can still, if you tighten those eccentric spacers on either side properly, that X bar will always stay level. It's very hard to get it out of level if you set it up properly.
That's true. If you've ever had to hand jog one of those things, it's not easy.
You said hand job.
Hand jog. Jog.
Oh, hand jog. I'm drinking too much. I can't hear.
Yeah, that mug got mighty empty there. Just saying. Yeah. If you want Rich to drink more, then send him some super chats here. Pay for his liquor bill.
Yeah, pay my liquor bill. This is the only show that I drink on.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're not going to tell you what the alternate name for the show is.
Let's get drunk with Rich.
Oh, no, I'm
looking forward to my first printer upgraded Ender 3 sometime soon. Great. I'm looking forward to for you to get an Ender 3 as well there. LEW.
I've got one order for a few people. The Ender 3 is a great printer, and honestly, if you just want to get started and you don't know what you're doing, like I was a couple of years ago, like Richard was a couple of years ago, the Ender 3 Pro and the regular Ender 3 is the greatest printer in that price range that you really have to do nothing to it out of the box unless there's something wrong with it.
Chris Walker, I do apologize if we offended your children. This is a kid-friendly show. This is a family-friendly show, but I like to have a drink on a Saturday night. And there goes our audience.
Demonetized.
So we got about 5 minutes left in tonight's stream. Just want to remind you guys that we do have the Great Tool giveaway going on. Right now it's going on till the end of next week. We are going to draw a winner for our for the 22nd of January. And that winner, again, it's only for people in North America. I apologize to all of our overseas people. But shipping to any other country but Canada or the US or Mexico is just unbelievably stupid. But there's a great amount of tools in there. There's socket sets. There's some iFixit tools. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And how you can get involved is you first of all, make sure that you're subscribed. Secondly, leave a like on this video or any one of the past 2 videos and put in the comments hashtag Year of the Maker, and you'll get entered into the contest for the toolkit. And again, we'll announce the winner on the 22nd and ship that out. Johnny Gardner, that is some dark tea. Yes, it is very dark tea. Chris Walker, I'm an Aussie. Takes a lot more than that to offend me. Okay. Brian, you said planned on making your CR10 dual extrusion. So you're getting called out on that now.
Yeah, I'm a little bit slow on that. What can I say? You know, it's in the process. You know what? Let me see if I can frame this off a bit for you guys here. Here's where mine is sitting at right now, actually, because it's functioning. I did do one thing you guys asked for. Okay, ready? I cleaned up some of the wiring.
That's cleaned up?
Yes, that is cleaned up.
Okay.
I bought 2 cable trays, which are chains that are too small, which is why I have 2. One purely for the BL Touch and one for everything else. Everything's running on Trinamic drivers now, so it's nice and quiet. And the wires are a little bit bundled up. I wouldn't say they're as clean as they could be, but it's getting there. I'm just trying to dial in some weird settings and issues that I had this week. And then hopefully I can start looking at changing it over to a dual extrusion because all my wiring's in place for it.
You switched to Octoprint.
Yeah, my page, it's kind of, it's a web browser behind me there. So it's bouncing around and it's really not framing up nice at all. It's supposed to be showing the steps for G-code right now. That looks pretty bad. I'm just going to switch back to my, oh, there we go. There we go. Now it's printing something again. There we go. So now you can see my G-code in real time.
So La W says the exotic filaments requiring a steel nozzle look exciting. Yes, you again, you're going to require an all metal hot end. That means no PTFE liners and no brass nozzles. Just so that we're clear on that. I'm printing a huge Homer Simpson bust at the moment. My wife asked for. Why? Me, because I can. I am printing the bust that just came out on Thingiverse for Princess Leia. That's what I'm printing right now.
I'm printing a bunch of cat finger scratchers because that makes sense. What can I say? My cat likes to be scratched. So
what cat doesn't?
Yeah, that's true. But these things, I'll have to find this model and link it on the group there. It's a stupidly functional thing that looks like something that we'd wear as like a 90s goth, basically, like little talons on the fingers. It's it's pretty ridiculous. My Ender 3 is just up and running though, because I tried an experiment earlier and I wasn't too happy with it, and that's CHEP's new Ender 3 partial Bowden mod for the Ender 3, which is where you put the you put a little piece of PTFE inside your hot end, and then you go and print this little screw-in bracket, so it'll go and press it down a little bit deeper, and you basically have 2 Bowden tubes. And in his video, he was talking about heat creep and what was going on there. I printed mine, and with PLA, even with the lukewarm temperatures and the fan running fine, it was enough to warp it and not cause it to lock in. So I had to pull all that out and hook it back up as normal. But if anyone's tried that, let me know how it works out. It's an interesting concept. Basically, it's supposed to deal with the PTFE lifting at the bottom of the nozzle by pressure fitting it and pushing it downwards. In theory, it works great, but I'm trying to think of a good material that you'd want to print that piece in. ABS is, again, one of those great ones to go to because it's glass transitions in about, 110? So you don't have to worry about it warping on your hot end unless you actually have heat creep, which it's probably doing you a favor by exposing that. But, again, a lot of people are experiencing these under extrusions that I don't experience on my Ender, so maybe it'll solve something. For me, it probably will change nothing. This bomb I printed the other day, I'm still pulling off all the little pieces on it, but that was printed on the Ender 3 Pro there. No extra special effort needed. That's PLA. So, and I think I had 1 layer slip there. It's kind of really hard to see there, but otherwise it's pretty shiny. So I don't know. Don't mess with it if it ain't broke, right?
All right, I'm going to answer a couple of quick questions here before we wrap things up. Any idea why one of my Ender 3s is growling? Greased and adjusted correct. Growling in terms of the Z-axis going up and down, that would mean that little nut that goes around it's too tight. That would be my first thing to look at. Mark L. Baker, does Spool 3D have a couple of Micro Swiss all-metal nozzles for the Formbot TX that match the CR10 S500? I do not know, but I will check for you, Mark, on Monday when I'm back in. Chris Walker, Johnny Gardner, maybe it's hungry. That could be. What dual extrusion system are you going to use, Brian?
Well, right now mine, again, I'll cut over to it there, but it's kind of hard to see underneath everything here, but that's an E3D V6 official hot end with a volcano nozzle. So I would prefer to match it and keep all the same for calibration. I think I'm going to modify the brackets a little bit though. I'm currently using I think it's called heavily modified somewhere. It looks like a crab. That's all I can tell you. I'll have to link the block later there. But man, it rocks. Again, I don't know how much I'm going to modify this. I actually have a bunch of E3D official parts beside me, so all I really need is the block. But then I got to also take into account where am I going to mount the extra motor and all that. So it's kind of a long-term thought, and it may just end up being I'm going to convert another printer into a dual extrusion because I don't need that big of a volume for it. So
Michael Fuentes says he bought an E3D Chimera for a future setup. That is great. Ron is just joining us, the Canadian Maker Project. Yes, there is a live show every Saturday night at 7, Ron.
Again, YouTube has not notified anyone tonight, and for that I apologize. I don't know what's going on with YouTube here. It still has not told me that we go live in notifications, but if I go to my main page, it is showing as us live now. For the first 20 minutes it didn't. So we leave our live shows up afterwards, so hopefully you can recap and get a bunch of it. If we ever wanted to continue the discussion, just kick us in the shins and we'll keep it going.
There you go. Michael Fuentes, this will be the last question for tonight. Did y'all switch the wheels on the X carriage? I did on my CR10s. Both of them now have polycarbonate wheels. And I will be putting polycarbonates all the way around. At $7 a polycarbonate, it adds up fast. So I have 2 of them, plus I have an Ender 3, so I've got to do all 3 of those. But with that said, that's it for tonight, guys. Brian, we'll throw it to you for your goodbye.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. In lieu of YouTube actually notifying us there, to answer that last question right there, you can see mine X is polycarbonate on the carriage, but not on the gantry. I haven't done those ones yet. I just have them sit in a bucket, and maybe I'll do that after the show tonight. But
there you go.
Thanks again for joining us, guys, and I'll leave you with Rich.
So there you go, guys. Thanks for joining us. As always, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and put down in the comments below this video, hashtag Year of the Maker to get entered into our 2019 3D printing tool draw. So until next time, we'll see you again on Tuesday when we show you what we did with the CR10S Pro.